You were a bodyguard for Michael Jackson,
Yeah.
Bella Hadid, Gigi Hadid, Kendall Jenner,
Yeah.
Naomi Campbell,
Naomi Campbell, Rita Halsey,
Dizzy Rascal,
Dizzy
you said?
Rascal, yeah. I've done quite a few on and off, to be honest.
Everyone's got an opinion of Michael Jackson, but not many people have got an opinion of Michael Jackson that have been up close.
Yeah.
So what would you say about him?
I thought, have I bitten off more than I can chew here?
Yeah.
When I was a child, all I wanted to do was be a soldier.
You were in Iraq and Afghanistan. There must have been some seriously shape-shifting events.
I mean, it's all your normal things you'd expect to see in war, really. Roadside bombs, ambushes, dead people in the streets, being murdered, stoned to death, stabbed, hung. But it all gets normalised.
You were getting papped.
When I used to look after Bella Hadid, I used to wear a bomber jacket for another company. And I got covered in Vogue quite a lot for wearing their stuff, and they started gifting me jackets, and I always said one day I'm going to make my own bomber jacket. Why am I wearing someone else's? I didn't see the point. In 2012 I doubled for Dave Bautista in the movie Final Score, and that kind of really made me want to be a sort of a proper actor.
What was your first film?
I did Green Zone thriller with Matt Damon. I'm working on a film at the moment, Rise of the Foot Soldier, Ibiza.
Oh, are you?
And we've got 1 week left when it comes out in November. I get put as Jason Statham a lot.
Yeah.
Would you like to be Jason Statham? I'm quite happy being Simon Newton, thanks. I mean,
I love that.
Do I want to be worth millions and being a movie star like Jason? Of course, but I want to do it as me.
More people should think that way. Yeah. Aim to be the person that other people
Start
compare.
having him stopped in the street and your name being shouted at him.
If I ever see him, I'm going to go, "Excuse me, Jason, you look like Simon Newton."
But if you go and that's setting the bar very high, I'm sure.
Right, Simon
Hi.
Newton. Very different guest for me. I've done a lot of different types of characters, but I've never done a bodyguard.
Okay.
Take that as you will, so to speak. Never done a bodyguard, and it's very interesting because you're an actor now as well. So you're not just a bodyguard. You've gone into a completely different field. But if we go all the way back to the beginning of your career, you started in military. So there's a lot to cover in this episode.
Yeah.
You were a bodyguard for Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Bella Hadid, Gigi Hadid, Kendall Jenner.
Yeah.
What are the other names? Naomi Campbell?
Naomi Campbell, Rita Halsey.
Dizzy Rascal,
Dizzy
you said?
Rascal, yeah. I've done quite a few on and off, to be honest.
I mean, Michael Jackson's probably the biggest name there, but I just think that gives you a completely different lifestyle and insight that most of us will ever have. And then, of course, the military work. You were a bodyguard in the military as well.
After I left the military, I left the army, and then I become a bodyguard and a private security contractor in the Middle East.
I can only imagine some of the things you've seen. And we said this off camera, you've told this story quite a few times.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to be able to go in on some of the deeper brain-based stuff as well as the story.
Yeah.
So for the listeners, we'll be telling the story as it is, and there will be some big bits that come out, but ultimately we're looking at how the brain's working and what that leaves you with, because each part of your career is quite different to the next, but also I suppose there's a lot of similarities. And I guess my first question is, what takes you into the military in the first place? Because when did you join? How old?
I was a little bit later, so normally you can join around 16, 17. I was 18 and a half, 19 nearly.
Still a boy though.
Yeah, still a young lad, yeah. I don't know, when I was a child, all I wanted to do was be a soldier.
Yeah.
I was in the Army Cadets, actually, so that was probably quite a big thing towards... and all my friends were Army Cadets, so I had friends at school, but I didn't go around with friends from school. It was all friends from the Army Cadets.
What was school like though?
It was a waste of time for me, I've got to be honest.
Tell me why.
I just knew at an early age that once I could read and write, that the rest of it didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Still the case now for a lot of boys, isn't it? I mean, when you were at school, obviously it was like you had to do it, but was it when you left that you started to read? I mean, obviously you had the cadets, but when you started to feel like, I'm learning who I am now. Yeah,
it wasn't until I was a young adult. Before I felt like I never got a chance to be the person I should have been, if you like, as a child. Just because of the way the school system and even when you're brought up, a lot of parents have the same kind of ideas how you're meant to be brought up with society in the West anyway, at a young age. Which was nothing wrong with that. I had a good childhood and everything, but it didn't allow me to be free and sort of run my life or run a life how I thought it should run until I was probably 18.
And that's when you really started to think about going into the military.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting, because I would imagine, I always say that boys take a lot longer to settle in their bodies. They need to move, they need to run. Sitting still in a classroom for, how old are you, Simon?
46.
Yeah, same age as me. So sitting still in a classroom when you really just need to move and discover who you are through your body, it's a really tough thing for boys. And I think boys now, even more so, because we've had COVID and now post-COVID, you know, the school's a bit broken. The system is already not, it wasn't right at our age for, you know, for our age group. Now they've got so much new technology, it's even harder for them to sit still in a classroom, I think. Their dopamine receptors work very differently to ours because of the constant scrolling and access to information. But even then, it just wasn't for you. You're not the sort of person that fits that mould.
School never taught me anything about life.
Yeah.
At all, and probably still doesn't today, and that's quite important. That's where, in fact, that's where a lot of people fall short in life. Is you can go to university and be a doctor, but you can still have trouble through life, through your adult life, because you don't know about life. So just true. Because you're educated, it doesn't mean to say you know about life, unfortunately.
And it's not even then. I mean, I would say, you know, I've got a 17-year-old, and I talk about her a lot on this, but I don't really want her to go to university at this point. I want her to travel a little bit and find her feet in the world.
You'll learn more travelling. That's how I learn. I travelled a lot with work, not sort of like holiday travelling, if you want to call it that. But I still travelled the world with work, and I never learnt so much from travelling.
You do, because you learn culturally the differences, the way that you carry yourself, the way that you speak, the way that you eat, all of those things. And also the different elements, I guess, of how people operate different systems. So by observing that, you're able to find yourself more, I think. But also, university is great if you do want to become a doctor.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's a lot to be said for education for certain things.
Yes.
But it's not for everything.
No, it's not. And certainly not for what you did, although I would imagine that going into the army at 18 and a half, 19, that is an education in itself. My only question there, though, is we know that the prefrontal cortex, which is that executive function in the brain, doesn't develop until mid-20s. So you are very mouldable at 18, 19. Yeah. And, you know, I wonder whether for you that was a good thing to have that level of conditioning, or whether in some ways that wasn't the best thing for you.
I think I want to be a soldier from about the age of 10 or 11. So even with doing the army cadets at 13, I think you could argue I was being moulded into that as early as that, really. Yeah.
And that was for you a good thing?
Yeah, because it's what I wanted to do. If it wasn't, then probably not, but it was, so...
Did it come with a downside, though? Because I'm only asking that because of the school thing. So that systemic, it's not the right thing for me. You know you want to go into the army, but the level of discipline, which I think is a good thing, by the way, I'm not saying discipline's bad, but it's very structured to a point where you don't really think for yourself. Yeah. And for you, that is good because you knew you wanted it. But would you say that there would be people that would struggle with that? Because you are really a product of the military then, not necessarily an individual, if that makes sense. Possibly.
I think at the time I didn't know I could think for myself anyway.
Yeah.
When you're young, you don't realise it's because adults make decisions for you quite often.
Yes.
So I didn't even think about being in the army. Maybe let me think for myself, because I was never thinking for myself at that age anyway.
Yeah.
But also, as I was only in the army for just short of 4 years.
Right.
And I left, and everything I did after that, I did have to think for myself, if you like.
That's interesting.
It'd been interesting to see if I'd stayed in the army, how much longer would I have actually stayed in, because I don't think I would have stayed in that much longer until I realised that I can't think for myself in here and I can do better, if I'm honest.
That is interesting, because I know that those that have been in for a long, long time, you know, there's lots of addicts and there's lots of lost souls that come out of the military. Especially if they've been injured, and you know it's lots of PTSD and all that sort of thing. But you were out, although you did go back in to be the bodyguard.
Yeah, and that's the only reason why I left. I never left early because I didn't like it, or because I didn't want to be there anymore. My plan when I joined the reserves first before I went to regular service.
Right.
And my plan was I'd do 22 years.
Yeah.
It's only because I got offered a job doing private security I actually left. So it was circumstantial why I left. It wasn't because I didn't like it. But had I stayed in, how much longer would I have done 22? I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, I think for you, your path has been what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
But yeah, that does lean into the differences between the short service and the longer service?
I don't think I would have stayed in that much longer, because after leaving I realised how much I like to do things differently to other people.
Right, which goes back to the school days.
And in the military you can't do that.
No. Okay, so that sort of covers that loop. That is interesting. I think maybe you were always meant to be a bit of a solo player. Is that fair?
Yeah, because I think I did the military because I really wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that it ended up being a short period, that probably was all I needed to do
yes.
for me.
Yeah.
That's probably enough.
That's a good foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're going into private security.
Yeah.
Bit different, but how did that come about? Because that's interesting that was offered so early on, I guess.
Yeah, I did.
Was that outside of the army?
No, well, I did the Iraq War 2003. I was out there for 6 months on the first part of the rebuild operation, and a friend of mine, private security companies, started working out there, and a friend of mine who'd left previous was on one of the teams, and I bumped into him at Basra Air Station, and he said, what are you doing? What are you doing? I said, I'm still with the military. And he said, you need to get a job on here. The money was way better, and the accommodation and everything was just better. And I wasn't sure if I could get a job with him or not, and he said he'd help me and put your CV in. Never had a CV before. We knocked a CV up, and anyway, they offered me a job, and then they realised I was still in the military, and they said they couldn't touch me while I was in the military. So, but to give them a call when I'd left, if I was going to leave, so I left at my earliest opportunity, and they offered me a job, and then within 1 month I was back in Iraq with a private security company.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what did they see in you, do you think?
I don't know. I had quite a strong sort of CV at the time. I had for someone who only did 4 years, I got around quite a bit, did quite a lot of different stuff. I was quite fortunate with some of the stuff I've got to do and people I got to work with, and I had some good sort of references off a number of different officers, and I did an operational tour in that time as well, which was one of the requirements to work out there. So I kind of ticked all the boxes. I was quite young.
Yeah.
I started 1 month before I was 24. And it wasn't long after I started with the private security company, they changed the age to a minimum of 25 due to insurance. But I was allowed to stay because it was changed while I was still working. But
can I just say, I mean, I know that you're telling the story like this happened, then that happened, then this happened because it's your life, right? But at 24 years old, to be considered to be someone that is adequate enough to do that level of security, that you are different, that there's something obviously about you that stands out that other people just don't have. Do you recognise that in yourself?
I do now. I got older. When I was younger, I thought nothing of it. I just got on with it and thought, this is good, But when I look back, and I've got nephews now, one of them's 19, and I look at him sometimes, I think, I was only a couple of years older than you, really, and I was out there looking after people in a war zone.
It is crazy when you think about it.
And at the time, in my very first job at 24, I was responsible for quite a number of people as well. It wasn't kind of just one. So, yeah, when I look back at it, I do think that's quite a
What's the magic bit then?
What do you mean?
Because that is different. To be able to be 24 years old, that level of security, you've already done 4 years in the army, didn't really fit in at school. So obviously you were always born different, but what is the difference?
I think they call it sink or swim.
Yeah.
To be honest.
You are the person that swims.
Yeah, there's a couple of times where when I was flying out to Kuwait to go back on the private security job, and I was thinking about all the things I might have to do and might not have to do, and what I was going to be. Responsibility is a big one. It's people's lives out in countries like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, have I bitten off more than I can chew here?
Yeah.
And I thought, do you know what? I'll just go and do it. Shut up and get on with it and stop moaning.
But it's almost like a bit, and I mean this in a positive way because you would need it. Quite robotic.
Yeah, I don't like. It's that whole period of my life taught me a lot, and it's helped, especially later on with the acting and other stuff.
Yeah.
With you can do it. You could just, but if you don't go and do it, you won't do it. So you've got to follow it through. Just my biggest thing really is just do the best you can do, and 9 times out of 10 your best will always be enough, as long as it is your best.
But can I say something, Simon? Because I hear you, and I'm not challenging you at all. I'm actually saying this for people that are listening going, yeah, but it's not as easy as that. Do you know what I mean? Like there's something about you.
Yeah, for me it is.
Yeah. There's something about that. That's
yeah.
the magic.
Yeah.
There's something about you that other people don't have. I'm not trying to say that makes you better than anybody else.
No,
I'm saying it's like a
different,
mechanism.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I would imagine that your ability to hyper focus and pay attention to one thing for a really long time
Yeah.
And to be almost hypervigilant a lot of the time. Because, of course, if you weren't using that in your job, especially at those formative years, I wonder how you would have coped with life, because you had this innate ability to be really in the zone. You've already said sink or swim, determination, just do it. That kind of, there's no other option. As a child then, what was playtime like for you? You know, what if I was to look at you as a 5-year-old playing with your toys, what would I have seen?
I don't know, to be honest. A lot of Lego, probably.
Stickle bricks, which were my favourite.
That's quite a long time ago now for me, but 41 years ago. But I mean, I from the age, I was always in the garden a lot. I was always out with a stick as a gun playing at quite an early age.
Did you have those little soldier toys?
Yeah,
you know,
I had all that.
ones?
Yeah, it's just reminded me. Yeah, I had all the plastic soldiers and tanks and bits and pieces and cars. But I didn't really do a lot indoors. I was never a computer gaming person. Yeah. Even when they started coming out as I got a bit older, I think I had one of them at some stage, but I didn't use it that often, and I've never been into anything like that. I was very much out and about. And then we get a bit older, you know, I was out on my bike, and living in Eastbourne at the time is one end of the South Downs, so we used to go up the Downs quite a lot and do all that sort of thing. So my playing was predominantly climbing trees outside, you know, and if it was toys, quite often it was toys, but in the garden.
Yeah, you like to be outside. And what were you like? I know we're digressing a little bit, but what were your favourite TV shows? Because obviously we're the same age.
I'm the same style. I don't really watch TV.
So you didn't really have like the cartoons on, like He-Man?
Not really. What I really... I remember things like... I remember all what you just said there, but I never watched anything religiously, if you like.
You were definitely more action-based.
Yeah.
Like Little Hunter.
Yeah.
Always out.
Yeah, and I could watch those things. A-Team, that was always a cracker.
Yeah.
What's it? Night Rider, you know.
Yeah, all those.
If it was a Saturday and I was in or whatever, maybe I would, because I knew it was on, but I'd never be like, I've got to get home for the A-Team.
No.
Do you know what I mean? It didn't matter.
I loved the A-Team.
I never followed. And today, you know, even with filming that, I don't watch films really. So I've got Netflix and bits and pieces, but very rarely do I watch much, put it, you know, or 15 minutes into it.
Is your brain too busy?
I think so, yeah. Quite often I watch things 3 times before I realise I've even seen it. Yeah, that's quite a classic one for me. I'll get right to the end and go, he gets shot in a minute, and he does. He's like, I've seen it before. We've only got 10 minutes left.
That's funny. Yeah, I wonder if your brain just can't. It just needs to be busy, like looking like a hunter.
Yeah,
like a very primitive kind of.
That's why I do so many things now. If there's any gaps in my brain of doing nothing, I have to fill it.
Yeah, you have to be on the move, doing something, planning something.
Yeah,
that makes sense. And then, actually, interestingly, if it's hard to watch a film, but you've got to be hypervigilant and aware and focused for protecting somebody. It's interesting how your brain can go into that area, but not so much concentrating on watching a TV program or doing anything for a long length of time. It feels like when you're in protector mode, that's where your brain just locks in, and that's where you hyperfocus.
I work best under pressure.
Yeah,
like sometimes severe pressure. I always work best under pressure. You know, if I'm doing even with filming, you know, you got all the camera stuffed in your face and there's hundreds of people there, and I just work best under pressure.
Have you ever been diagnosed with ADHD?
No, but I mean, you know.
It's fairly obvious. I mean...
Don't think I need to be, do I?
No, not now. I've told you. It's official. No, it's just that the thing you say there, that's a dopamine thing.
Yeah.
Because the way that ADHD works, and people are just going to go, oh my God, there she is diagnosing somebody else. I'm diagnosed with it, so I just diagnose everybody else.
We'll have it.
But the inability to retain dopamine, it means that you're constantly seeking it. And so I always say, imagine 2 1-litre bottles. Let's say a neurotypical person gets their shot of dopamine and it's retained in that 1-litre bottle for a significant amount of time. The ADHD brain, you get that shot of dopamine and within seconds it's leaving the bottle.
Again,
So you're constantly needing something to stimulate you. And then, of course, when you're under pressure and there's lots of chaos, you're going to get loads of dopamine. But actually, because if you put the neurotypical person in the same situation, they're now overflowing with dopamine because they've already got enough. So it actually puts them into quite an anxious, because it puts the whole dopaminergic system out of whack. So it puts them in quite an anxious, stressed state. Yeah. Whereas for the person that can't retain dopamine as easily, it puts us into a state of calm, focus, stability. So I think a lot of what you experience there is because your brain needs that. And so I'd imagine if you're not working and you're not busy, you get quite low quite quickly.
I wouldn't know, I'm never not working.
Yeah, so you don't allow yourself that space.
No.
And again, you'll find with the military and the traumas that people experience, even if they've not had ADHD in childhood, their brain sort of replicates ADHD symptoms through chronic stress and chronic trauma. Which brings me on to the next bit. Nice segue into the dark stuff. But you must have seen some serious shit.
Yeah, a lot, yeah. Over the years, one form or another.
So for you, your brain must have gone through loops and tunnels that other people can't even imagine unless they've been there themselves. What was kind of the worst part of your career? Because you were in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, both, yeah.
And you were doing private security then. I mean, we can't talk about all of it because I'm sure there's things you're not allowed to talk about, but there must have been some seriously shape-shifting events.
Iraq was a rougher time for me than Afghanistan, although Afghanistan was still rough for a lot of people. For me, it wasn't too bad. But I mean, if I tell you, you'd probably think it's bad, but compared to Iraq was the rough one. But I mean, it's all your normal things you'd expect to see in war, really. There's a lot of roadside bombs, there's a lot of ambushes, there's a lot of dead people in the streets from time to time, for all number of different reasons. Being murdered, just a normal murdering, being shot, stoned to death, stabbed, hung, which is quite, at the time, was quite a normal thing, you could argue, particularly in Iraq. So you get to see all that. And then obviously stuff you're involved, like physically involved in yourself.
Yeah.
But it all gets normalised. And not to mention that your guys on your team or on other teams who get killed throughout the weeks or the months.
The people that you love.
The people that you know really well, or not work for other companies, but you know them, and you go to lunch, they're not in that day, where's he? Oh, we got hit last night. And there used to be a lot of that as well. I used to stay in the Sheraton and Palestine hotels in Baghdad, which is where all the Western news crews were. And we was protected by blast walls, and a platoon of US Army soldiers would look after our protection. But I mean, that got rocketed quite a few times. We used to get mortars drop in over the top because they knew it was just all Westerners, and they used to try and bomb it all the time. Car bombs at the entrances and exits, and that was even getting in and out of that place. You had to choose which one you wanted to use that day because there was only two ways in and out, and it just depended on what one they wanted to blow up that day, kind of thing. So you just had to hope you chose the wrong one.
So you must dissociate and just naturally, I mean, not like choose to, you must just naturally start to dissociate because you say there it becomes normalised. It
does to a certain extent. When it gets really rough, I used to just consider myself already dead.
Interesting you say that because there's, if you think of the brain-body system, basically the brain is linked to the body through the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve, if it's overused, so it's overstimulated all the time and you're in fight flight all the time, it sort of becomes a bit lazy because a bit like if you overuse a muscle, you wear it out. And what happens is if you end up seeing so much devastation and murder and trauma and all the things, and then you're losing friends every day, the body eventually goes, well, I can't fight this, I can't run away. So it goes into dorsal vagal state, which is when you start to play dead. Because in an animal situation, if a lion is coming at you and you're a tiny little animal, the best bit is shut down. Literally, the body goes into playing dead so that the lion thinks you're already dead and doesn't bother with you. Sure. But of course, then the animal gets up 15 minutes later, returns to homeostasis, starts to hunt and eat again, and they don't recall the situation that's just happened. But you were doing that day in, day out. You would have gone into play dead mode, which sort of numbs you out a little bit.
Yeah, it does. That's what I probably meant by desensitised, I guess. Yeah. It's quite a lot of strain on you at the time, but you don't realise, subconsciously, you don't realise you're going through.
Yeah. So how long do you think you stayed numb for? I mean, it would have become like a daily normality, wouldn't it, that numbness?
I mean, apart from probably years.
Would you say there's an element of it now?
I'd say no, but realistically, somewhere it might be. I mean, I did 6 or 7 years, I think, between all those, sort of together in those places, and pretty much the whole time you're kind of numb to it. Because you can't work there. You can't work somewhere like that being scared about getting shot, blown up, or what might come with it, because you go out every day. So
dehumanises you.
You kind of, you're somewhere, you get some of it or they don't. And to get on with it, you can't start worrying about being killed every day. Everyone knows that's a possibility.
Yeah.
But also there's a little bit of it's not going to be me in there.
Well, it's amazing you came out unscathed.
Yeah, a lot of the guys didn't, you know what I mean?
No.
So.
And that in itself, you know, that survivor's guilt thing, where a lot of your friends might have lost limbs or, you know, lost their lives or whatever.
I used to say I made a lot of good choices, and not to say other people made bad choices, but it's a bit of luck thrown in there. I was always, if anything happens, I was always well up for it. And that was always, I always personally used to think that was important. If you get out the car at 70% when it's all going wrong, it can get you, it could, you know, could catch up with you.
Did it ever?
Well, if you get out of the car, when it's all going wrong, if you get out of the car, I was 120% every time.
Yeah.
I was having whatever needed to be had.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how bad I felt that day, headache, felt sick in the car, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As soon as that bomb goes off, I was 120%.
Wow. It's like, and that's where I said about being a bit robotic.
Yeah.
You've got to be, I said the term there, dehumanised, and I don't mean that in an offensive way, but you can't, you've got to be animal.
I was just keen on doing a good job.
Yeah, but that is quite animalistic. I mean, obviously, and I mean this in the sense of where you were then, not where you are now.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But an animal doesn't think, oh, I better not do that because I've got 2 kids at home. You know, they just do what they've got to do in that moment. There's no choice.
But you've got to remember as well, in that job, that's the only job you've got.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, you might as well go home. That's the only job you've got. So when everyone else is running away, you're running to it. It's the only job you've got. That's what you're paid all the money for. And if you've gone for weeks or months without anything happening, the morning that it does happen, that's the only job you've got. So it isn't, should I run away? Should I stay? Should I go? It's just a no-brainer.
Well, it is for you. And obviously that's one of the reasons that they saw your potential. Because not everybody could do that. And that's where you say,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's what makes you different. And that's why I was asking those questions early on, because I knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll never work that out today because this is not your therapy session, but because I'm so nosy, I like to go in. But no, it's just an interesting mindset that is your only job, Ella. Come on, you know, that's what you're doing. If you're not doing it, then go home.
Yeah.
But I don't know many people that think that way. Obviously, you know loads of people that think that way because you're in the military. Many, but I would say the percentages of that are quite low if you looked at the general population.
Yeah, it's more so today than back in the sort of 70s and 80s.
Correct. Because obviously we came from World War II, World War One.
Yeah, there's a lot of it then.
Yeah, so we were growing up around our grandparents and, you know, people telling us stories. It was certainly, and now you just wouldn't, I mean, can you imagine what would happen if we needed people now?
Well, we've had it, to be honest.
Yeah.
We're not in a good place at all anymore, unfortunately.
No. Do you feel safe, actually, from a wider perspective as a country?
No, we're not.
No.
It's not even, don't even not need to feel safe. We're not safe.
Yeah.
And they know that, you know, the politicians, everyone knows that at the moment.
Yeah.
But I don't worry about it. It's not something I worry about, but we're far from safe.
Yeah, I mean, well, I can't imagine you would worry because that's not what you do. You do rather than...
I've got too many other things to do rather than worry about that, do you know what I mean?
But it's just an interesting point, isn't it, is that we have lost that stability.
We probably won't get it back neither, not in our lifetime, maybe in a couple of generations if they do the right thing, but they probably won't do the right thing and we probably never get it back.
Yeah, that's a scary thought, which we won't go on about too much today because people will start to go, right, this is going downhill.
It's all over, yeah.
Switch off.
And that's the thing with it as well, you know, there is a lot of it. There's still a lot of good in it all, what is going on at the moment, but... When we all judge and say that we're not in a good place, we're not safe, it's because we compare it to
where we were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you compare us to other countries, we're actually very safe.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So it just depends how you want to look at it, really.
Yeah, I think you do need to have the broader perspective, and that is a conversation that's an interesting one. And
I walk around London. London's very unsafe at the moment with watch theft and stabbings and shootings.
Yeah.
It's all gone through the roof. When I walked around Baghdad 20 years ago, or however long ago it was now, I was, you know, I did feel for my life there. I don't feel for my life in London.
No.
But if you've just come from Cotswolds and moved to London,
yes,
you might be struggling. So
it's a sliding scale of what we consider safe. Yeah, it is relative. And that is a very good point to make there. Because I go to London all the time and I don't feel unsafe in London. But I remember going to London when I was a kid and hearing, you know, beware of pickpockets, beware of this.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing now, as long as you're sensible.
That's the problem because of my my history, my work history, I'm very aware of what I'm doing. I'm very aware of my watch, my phone, where I am. I always know where I'm going.
Yeah.
I don't wear earphones ever. You know, all these things. But when I see people, I was on the tube only the other week and there's a woman there with a bag over her arm with a zip undone. I could see her phone. She had earphones in. I could have had everything out of her bag. She wouldn't even noticed.
God, it must be good to know you. Like,
yeah, well, yeah, she's...
Because you're just telling people all the time, do this, do that.
Yeah,
you'd have had it all.
I was had the whole lot, yeah. And I'll see it every day. Walking people just, it's not because they see they can't be bothered. They're just clueless.
Yeah, because
which in that town in London, you get eaten alive now.
Yeah, you would. You've got to be aware. I mean, I know when people are just. I use my phone a little bit for the maps, and because I can't follow a map very well, I have to have my earphones in.
Right.
But just while
so
I'm following,
it tells you where to go.
Yeah, because looking at a map, I know I can follow it if someone's telling me. If I'm looking at it, I'm like, what the hell is that? Because you know the little thing on the Google Maps. This is for people that are stupid like me. Because it doesn't always point you in the right direction.
No.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
So. Of course you do.
I actually still read, because obviously being in the military and everything else, I actually quite often, I don't even look at the thing.
You
like
read an actual map?
I read it like a map. Yeah, I still do that.
To me, that blows my mind.
That's habit, probably.
But, do you know, I never learned to read a proper map. Because, again...
you wouldn't, would you? Why would you?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't need to. 7 years old. What do you fancy doing today, Ella?
Yeah,
well...
people don't. It's military and... Probably military, unless you're some sort of avid outdoor walking person or something.
Yeah.
By and large, what occupations do you need to read them
It's
properly,
true.
like in every sense of it? It's very few.
And we've got lazier and lazier because we had sat nav and then we've got it on our phones.
Now you've got GPSs and all this stuff on your phones. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's great because obviously I can just put in an earphone and listen to where I'm supposed to go, and I wouldn't get anywhere if I didn't have that.
No.
Literally, if I try and follow it by looking at it, I'd never get anywhere.
Yeah.
But the point being, really, is that I only put one in now, so that I can always hear what's going on around me.
Wear one,
yeah, because also I've got a very old phone. If anyone stole it, that'd be massively disappointed. But they don't want your phone now; they want what's on it, don't they?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
they want all
especially
your details.
Especially now with your contactless Apple Pay and all this stuff.
Yes, so that's why we've got to be so careful. I mean, because people will say what I've just said. Well, no one wants my phone, but it's how.
Not about that.
Yeah, it's a scary time.
And even if they don't want it and they nick it and realise they don't want it, they throw it in the bin. They don't give it back to you.
Yeah, and now you're without
still
everything.
Lost your phone.
Yeah,
so I mean,
it is, and that is an irritation, obviously, because everything's on there, and the amount of things you've got to do just to keep everything secure is crazy now. But I think what's interesting about your story is that you obviously, like I say, you've obviously always thought slightly differently. You've never been the average kid to sit in front of the TV and eat your food, and you've always been out and about. You clearly had a skill for what you were doing. You're able to desensitise whilst also being quite morally ethical, it seems.
Yeah.
And that's unusual as well, to be able to desensitise, sort of go into a more animalistic mode, but still keep the humanness in other ways.
Yeah.
I mean, that, for me, being curious about the brain, that's unusual. And it's almost like you've compartmentalised various parts of you. So there's probably the part of you that can be emotional and empathetic and available when needed for other people, but then there's a part of you that's completely shut down. Does it feel like that sometimes?
Yeah, a little bit. I was always big, and I still am today, really, on principle. So, my principles, I'm quite black and white, whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But so when it comes to violence particularly, everything's principle-based for me, really. And quite often, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
I recognise that quite easily and quite quickly. Even though I'm capable of it, I still won't. And I've always been like that. It's never been, to be doing things I shouldn't be doing because of my skill set. It's never been a thing for me.
I love that. That's very old school, like you say, principles. It's like the 1940s. If something needs to be done, you do it. But you've got to make sure you're doing things for the right reasons.
For the right reason, yeah.
So on that note, I know we're going around the houses here, but it's because there's parts of you coming out that I want to explore as it happens. To have those principles and to be emotionally intelligent in that way, where did you learn that from? What was family life like for you?
I guess so. I can only assume the principal thing was my parents, because I got, where else do you pick that up from? I mean, my dad was a firefighter.
Oh, wow.
My mum had various jobs bringing up my children. They're both very normal, hard-working people. No one in my family as such had businesses. They've all worked for other people. Ultimately, my dad, with the firefighter, was helping helping others his whole life, saving lives. Even certainly in the early years when he started, the kit and equipment they have today didn't have back then. You use an axe and a fluffy tunic sort of thing.
Yeah.
So he would have had it tough at the beginning. But yeah, I don't know. I wasn't a super strict upbringing or anything like that. I'm just a believer in if you've done something wrong, then you sort of have to swallow what comes with that. And if you haven't, then you should be left alone.
Yeah. I mean, that is very basic, but it's a good rule to live by.
And that's kind of on everything, really.
So it's very simple, isn't it, the way you think in that sense? Which is actually a really high indicator of positive mental health: simplicity, flexibility and adaptability, as well as acceptance. It seems like you've got all of those things.
And I always try to live my own life like that. It's not easy to swallow when you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And first of all, I try not to do things wrong, so that's not something I have to worry about that much.
Yeah.
But on the times that you do, maybe it wasn't intent or whatever, but everyone does something wrong at some stage.
Of course.
Just swallow it.
Yeah, deal with it.
Just swallow it, yeah. And for me, I've always tried to do it.
And did you have siblings?
I got a sister.
So it was you and your sister, your mum and your dad. And your mum was, like you say, she was of the age where they were doing various different jobs.
Yeah, just to try and get it around school hours and stuff.
So your mum was quite often at home. And would you say that she was somebody that you were feeling safe with and feeling loved by and feling, looked after by?
Yeah, I mean, again, my family, we're not a family of money or anything like that when I was younger, but they'd always do the sort of best they could of getting us out around the local park, or we had one family holiday every couple of 2 or 3 years to Spain or something for a week.
Yeah.
So my dad was always keen on trying to get us to travel, albeit not far, but
he wanted
get
you
a
to
proper
have
family
something.
holiday rather than just going down to Bognor or something. They wanted to try and do something. So they always did that. But I had a very, I call it a standard upbringing. And what's standard now? Some people have awful, some people have way better than I did.
Yeah.
But I just had a sort of a very simple upbringing, I'd say.
Again, I mean, it's underrated. That kind of simplicity of just 2.4 children, quite literally.
Yeah. We didn't have loads of money. My dad had a car. It was never a new car.
Yeah.
I always had trainers on my feet. Not 2 pairs, one, but I always had a pair that worked.
Yeah.
Food at school, packed lunch. We always had everything we needed, but it is of a very basic but serviceable level.
Yeah.
Not a basic and unserviceable level, which a lot of people had when I was at school as well.
Yeah.
And then you had a small amount, you had everything.
Yeah. Sounds like you're very humble, like appreciative of those.
I am more so now. I make quite a lot of money these days with everything I've got going on, and no one's given me anything.
Yeah.
I've had no help from anyone, and that's not to sort of poor me, but I just haven't. And to be fair, probably could have done, but didn't accept it. I just like to do things on my own.
Well, you're the lone wolf.
Yeah.
You've got to do it your way, haven't you?
Yeah, so I think that makes me realise now. And my family, the rest of my family are still very much like they was when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Financially and with what they're doing. Literally the whole family's still the same. So it's only me who sort of broke away a bit there. So I'm quite probably more humble now because of what I have in my life.
And what you've seen.
Yeah, and although it's made by me, but it's still, and what I've seen, I mean, my biggest thing now is what's the worst that's going to happen to me now is, it used to be death.
Yeah.
Dying was always the worst that could happen to you. Now, especially with filming and all the other things I do, someone will laugh at you or someone will beat you offset or, none of it matters. I judge everything by being killed.
And do you know what? I always say this, and, particularly for people that have gone through trauma, like, everyone knows the story if they're regular listeners of me, but it's made me so resilient. And I feel like it's almost like if you develop skills early on that allow you to problem solve and be curious and find different ways of doing things, later on, when something comes, you're actually well prepared for it. Yeah. You've got cellular memory. As well as conscious memory of how to do things. So I always found that for me, when I was in a terribly dark place, if I looked at other people and watched them and observed what they were doing and sort of took lessons from that, as long as I was curious and as long as I was willing, there was always a way out of a problem.
Yeah, it always is. I always say one of the biggest things I didn't realise until I got older, if I could give any advice, is don't do what's easy.
Yes, I totally agree.
It's the biggest one for me.
Yeah.
just do anything that's hard.
Yeah. Even if you fail, because you'll learn.
Just do everything that's hard, because the progression and your way you'll build your life a lot quicker, in a lot bigger leaps, in a lot better ways. No one gets anything from doing anything that's easy, because everyone does what's easy.
You're absolutely right. You'll learn something, but you learn a lot more when you go through failure, rejection. More. You know, those things are powerful.
And you won't always fail neither, just because it's hard. It doesn't mean you're going to fail.
But I always say prepare to fail.
Yeah, of course.
And then prepare to do something with the failure. The failure is a gift, if you allow it to be. And if you don't fail, bonus.
I actually think anything I've done what's really hard, I've never failed, if I'm honest. Because when it's been really, really hard, I've always won.
But I mean, if you're going out into situations at the age of 24, 25, 26, where it is life or death, it's going to be hard for you to see anything as a failure when you've done those things.
You certainly don't worry about much in life.
No, I bet.
Just be careful of that, though.
Well, this is what I was saying about the numbness.
Yeah, you have to be careful of that. Yeah.
You become desensitised, dehumanised to a point.
It's great in some ways, but you also it's not great to be someone who don't care about anything.
How's that affected your life then? Because obviously that has happened at times, I'm sure.
Not caring about anything?
Yeah.
I'm always conscious of that, to make sure I do care at the right time.
Has there been times when you haven't?
I'm sure. I can't think of. I'm sure there's times I should have cared more when I didn't, but I've always been conscious of someone, and maybe I'm not someone, and not in a bad way, not through anything of my fault, if you like, but maybe someone who doesn't care enough at times.
Yeah.
And as you get older, I think you become more aware of that.
Yeah.
And even today, I still probably say and do things what can come across. It's not the way I mean it.
No.
But it comes across totally incorrect.
Are you quite good at catching it if someone comes back to you and says...
Well, it's easy to know because they get offended.
Yeah. So you're like, uh-oh, I've done it.
But I always just politely point out I'm not offended, and that's why I'm always going to be happier than you.
Your problem, mate, not mine.
And that's another thing with all this, that side of it, I don't get offended easily.
No, I can't imagine you do.
It doesn't really bother me. Even if I don't know you, I don't care. You say what you want to me, it makes a difference to me.
Well, often if they don't know you, they're not judging you, that it's a rejection of themselves anyway.
Yeah, really, especially even doing things like this with you, and you always get the comments, you get some lovely ones, you get some, some clowns come on there.
Yeah.
And it's the same with acting, not everyone watches the film, some love the film, some don't, So I first of all, I don't read any of that anyway, but equally, I don't, it's neither here nor there to me.
Well, you're very much someone who lives in the present moment.
Yeah.
So you're on to the next.
Yeah.
You're not going to live in somebody else's opinion of you. What's the point? It doesn't make any sense.
My biggest thing, don't ever hit me.
Yeah. I'm never going to hit you, by the way.
Because that's different for me. Then you can say what you want to me. I don't care what you say, but don't ever hit me. Yeah, I react.
How tall are you?
5'11".
So you're 5'11", and you're quite big for those that don't know. So if they are thinking about hitting you, they're going to get a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't mean I'm the toughest guy out there at all by any stretch of the imagination, but I just react differently to that. And I know no one likes that, don't get me wrong, but I have a deep, sort of a deep problem with that, yeah.
Well, you're a bodyguard, so I would imagine that you're tuned in to having a deep problem with that. I think
for me it comes with principle again. I wouldn't hit you.
Yeah.
That's my fault straight away. I wouldn't hit you.
Yeah.
And you've hit me, so that doesn't bode well.
Well, it's about self-control for the other person as well, isn't it? They haven't taken that moment to assess the situation.
I take it more personal than maybe I should, because I wouldn't have done it to you.
That's very interesting. And where's that come from?
I just think principle again.
But then you might not hold the same principle with, like you say, you don't intend to upset someone, but you might have offended someone. And that's kind of like their problem because you haven't meant it.
It isn't. It depends what I've said. I mean, sometimes I can learn from that. But maybe I could have said that differently. But at the time, I didn't even see. What? If I thought it was going to be offend someone, I wouldn't have said it, or I'd have said it differently.
Yes,
Normally,
your intention is never to offend.
Yeah. So sometimes it's quite nice when people are offended because it actually makes me look at it a different way.
Yeah. You're learning something again, isn't it? It's the lesson.
Yeah. But you can't win neither, because I could have said that to someone else, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
And then, do you know what I mean? So you can't, especially if they're new people, you don't really know. So you can't win them all.
And that's why it's so important just to be authentically you. And then if you realise someone's taking something the wrong way, it's about communication style, isn't it? It's conflict resolution.
Yeah.
And it's just being able to sort of see it from their perspective, listen to what they've said.
When I was a bodyguard, I never laid a finger on anyone in the whole outside of Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
When I worked in Europe and London, I never laid a finger on anyone. It was all from me talking to people or sort of just being in the right place, right time. And
I mean, on that, because obviously we've kind of done a whistle-stop tour of your life so far, and you've done some high-end security and high-end situations. You've explained some of the things that you've seen. Now we're moving on to Michael Jackson and Kendall Jenner.
Mm.
So a totally different vibe.
Yeah.
So obviously you left the high end security in the army or the military.
Yeah.
Private work.
East, yeah.
And you were you chosen to do this kind of celebrity bodyguard stuff?
Well, yeah, in the end I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. When I was leaving Afghanistan, I looked at a various number of jobs, and a mate of mine who's a bit older than me, he said, well, why don't you be a bodyguard in London? Because I've spoken about it a few times. It's quite a difficult occupation to get into. You can get full-time clients, but quite often it's 2 or 3 weeks work here, there and everywhere. So to leave a sort of a substantial job to go back to not knowing anyone and trying to go jobbing and getting work, it's a bit of a leap. I think I had 10 grand in the bank or something at the time, and I thought that's all I've got to go back and make. Which
isn't
work.
A lot when you haven't
not
got
really
regular
if you don't
work.
end up not getting any work. No, especially London, because even back it's never been cheaper in London. I mean, so
yeah.
And I just went back and I just went at it again and got out there and met people, and in the end, within 1 year of being back in the UK, I started up a private security company, which I still own today. Obviously, it's a lot bigger now. Yeah. Because I was getting so much work and asked to do it.
You're not doing security though, are you?
No, I still own the company, but I don't have nothing to do with it as such.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I started off with Dubai Royal Family when I come back. Actually, the Sussex Police offered me a job. I don't know if I can. Not really police officer type person, if I'm honest. There's nothing wrong with they do a great job, but for me, it wasn't my thing.
I can't see you being a police officer.
Actually, the money would put me off, to be honest.
Well, awful. I can imagine, yeah.
It's awful. So then I got offered the Dubai family job, and I took that. I did 2 years of that. In that time, I set up my business. I then went out on all tankers doing the anti-piracy, stopping them being captured by pirates in coastal Somalia.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that for a little while on and off. That was quite a good job. That was quite good fun.
But also, I mean, those pirates are serious.
They wanted the ship, yeah.
I mean, that people that don't know, I mean, I don't know a lot. I suppose my knowledge of this comes from Captain Phillips.
Yeah, that's a true story, yeah. That's 100% true story.
But I loved that film. I think because it was so insightful. I didn't really know anything about it before that.
Yeah.
So I know from that film that it is quite dangerous and serious.
Yeah.
But you described it as fun.
Well, for us it was. You've got to bear in mind where we'd just come from. A lot of us have been out in the Middle East, and now we're on a huge oil tanker in the middle of the Gulf of Aden somewhere. We had firearms, not all the time, but more often than not. And you got these little speedboats coming in trying to attack you. It wasn't a big deal for us, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's relative, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if they get on board, it could get a bit nasty, but quite often it didn't.
And I suppose, without going into detail, you've got to do what you've got to do in those situations.
Yeah.
That's your job.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff, I always say to people, anything I've done, I wouldn't be here now if I hadn't done it.
Yes.
That's how I decide if I'm going to do it or not.
Yeah, because it's life or death.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you said sink or swim earlier, but really it's life or death, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm up for giving people a chance, but giving them a chance to kill me is not one of the things I'm up for.
No, and that's understandable, to be fair. I think we can all agree that that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose, though, in those situations, all of us have got a part of our... When we talk about ego and super ego and id, the Freudian theory around ego, we've all got a breaking point where, I mean, I always say, if someone went for my daughter, I'd do heinous things to protect her. There's nothing I wouldn't do. And I think you don't know how far you'll go until you're in the situation. And so I guess there's some sort of break in our mind when we're put into a situation where it's life or death. The reality is that if you're protecting somebody, be that your own child or be that your job, there is a certain amount of things that we won't talk about, but we would all agree that we probably do. And it does show that other side to us. Again, we spoke about the numbness and the dehumanisation. Yeah.
Everyone's got a capability of being of violence, really. I mean, violence is quite a strong word because people associate it quite often with the criminal element and doing things you shouldn't. But not violence is violence. Violence is not necessarily, all channeled for people in prison, if you like.
Yeah, you're right.
So everyone's got it in them. So some more than others, and some don't use it at the right time. That's all.
Yes. What would you say before we move on to the private work, but what would you say about the people that have literally no self-control? So we're talking about people that maybe hurt children or that maybe hurt women and rob old people from your perspective, because you're so principled, and I think the level of self-control that you have and the way that you can make those choices rationally, what do you think about those people?
I think it depends. So if you're robbing people and you're doing these things because you've got no money and that's your way of life, then you don't need to hurt people to do that.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. If you're doing it purely to make a name for yourself, then you can actually be far more dangerous if you pick and choose when you do it rather than just running around and doing it.
Yeah. So those people, you would say
so if you can find self-control, you will actually find you'll be more respected and far more dangerous person than you will be without it.
So the biggest and I suppose the best gangsters, if you like, are the ones that are clever.
Of course. You won't know who they are most of the time.
You've got no idea. You don't know. You can walk past them in the street and you wouldn't sniff it out.
No.
Would you sniff it out?
Probably not.
Really?
Probably not, because just if and again, in that world, there's a lot of principle. There's a lot of you got to remember with a lot. It's all sorts of different elements of criminal underworld mentality, but quite often at the higher end as well, they keep it within themselves.
Yeah, of course.
So there is a lot of bloodshed and there is a lot of shootings, but it's not Mrs. Goggins down Co-op. do you know what I mean? It's all within themselves.
Yeah.
And although it's still illegal and it's still not, there's a lot of what goes with that. It's kind of, if you're in that world and you sign up to that world, then everybody knows what's possible. A little bit like me working in Iraq. I knew what come with that. So it's not to try and glamorise criminality, but
have you been around those people though and actually seen, and I mean this from the psychological perspective, and seen the way that they carry themselves and the way that they, body language, IQs, communication.
I mean, you'll probably find that most of them are the biggest gentlemen you ever meet. Yeah.
Which is where it's, again, you see a lot of, even just thinking about the craze, and you look at the people like Barbara Windsor who loved them because they were obviously very charming and they knew how to handle themselves. And it's, again, it's a different mentality, but applied in the wrong way sometimes and applied in the right way at others. So it's just, I think for most of us, we're so intrigued by it because you speak about Mrs. Goggins down at the Co-op. Well, most of us, we fit into that mould.
Yeah.
And so everything else, it looks quite glamorous as well because it's glamorised. But also there's this real poisonous edge to all of this, isn't there?
I think in anything like that as well, it's like anything, criminals or not, everyone talks about the best bits.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you're talking about. Even if you're talking about your shopping trip, you talk about the best bits of the shopping trip.
You do.
You don't talk about the fact you stepped in a load of dog poo on the way out of the Sainsbury's. You forget that bit, didn't you?
Were you watching me earlier?
You don't mention that bit, but you do mention how nice the weather was and that you got a bargain in the shop. Do you know what I mean?
You do. It's the same as social media. You show the highlights, don't you? You don't go into the dark side.
It's the same in every walk, and it's the same with that kind of people. But and also, it's not good to be, if you're doing something you shouldn't be anyway. It's probably not good to be telling everyone about it.
Well, no, if you do tell everyone about it, you're doing it wrong.
Exactly.
Simple as that. Right. So you move into this private security work. You're doing the Dubai royal family, which I'd imagine is quite glamorous and,
Yeah, well, it wasn't. I had a really easy job, but the guy, I won't say it was, but the guy I was looking after, it wasn't in that much, so I didn't have that much to do. And actually, that's when at the end of that Dubai job, that's when I got my first film to work on.
What was your first film?
I did Green Zone thriller with Matt Damon, and we was out in Morocco for a couple of months filming out there.
Wow.
Yeah, I played a US Special Forces soldier. But I was still a working bodyguard, so I finished that job, went straight out on that. Had real good fun, really enjoyed it, and thought one day I'm going to pick this up properly. And kind of shelved it after that for a little bit. I did a few other bits after that, but shelved it. Back to the UK, did the ships, went on the boats, and then before that actually is when I'd done Michael Jackson. I'd done Michael Jackson.
So before that film?
Yeah, so when I was in Afghanistan, I was home on leave. That's when I slipped Michael Jackson in. Michael Jackson was my first job actually in the UK.
Wow.
For looking after anyone, because before then I'd always been in the Middle East or somewhere else.
How close do you get to someone like that? I mean, obviously physically you get close.
So all the people I've looked after, it's always been me, just on my own. But Jackson, you can't do it on your own. I think there's 5 or 6 of us all together in the end.
Yeah. Is that purely because of the
fan base?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too big. So although you got to talk to him at times and that, I didn't get anywhere near as close to him as I did any of the other people I looked after.
Yeah. What was it like? What's your opinion? I mean, I'll you know, obviously I think everyone's got an opinion of Michael Jackson, and but not many people have got an opinion of Michael Jackson that have been up close.
Yeah.
So what would you say about him?
I would say there's a little bit of mental health there for sure.
Oh, I would imagine. I mean, the life that he led.
He come across as a decent, nice person. If I was to sort of point the finger a little bit, he appeared to me that his mental age was a lot younger than what he should have been.
Which he kind of spoke about quite openly, didn't he? Sort of said the Peter Pan thing, because he'd never had his childhood. No.
So and it was a lot younger, like you could even argue, 13, 14-year-olds.
Yeah, his sort of emotional stunted age was there.
Yeah.
And that's probably why he was so comfortable around younger people, because he felt, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you believe what he did or not, I'm not going to get into that, because that starts off all sorts of comments.
Yeah,
but
there's tons of stuff you can talk about.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that, because that's not what I'm about. But you could see that he was living in his childhood state. And he never was really free of that, I don't think, was he?
No, I think he died in the same place. Really.
I think you're right. And was that quite interesting for you? Because obviously that was, at the time, 2010, the biggest name in the world.
2006 it was.
Sorry, 2006.
Yeah, when I did it,
So yeah, he was undoubtedly the biggest name in the world.
Yeah, he was still a big thing then, yeah.
Could you believe it? Like,
I didn't think much, again, because... when I never went out looking to look after celebrities.
Yeah.
I worked for whoever paid me the right money, and as long as it was ethical, I did the job. Actually, I didn't know it was him. I was just told a businessman was coming to town. Will you look after him? And I said no to the job to start with. I was up in Edinburgh seeing a mate. I'd just come back from Afghanistan. I had 4 weeks off before I went back again. We was out having a drink and that, and he called me. I said no, because I thought I've got to fly back down to London to do it. I don't really want to do it. I've only got 4 weeks off anyway. The job, I think it was 10 days or something. I don't waste 10 days of my leave. And they called me back and they upped the money and said, "Do we do it?" I said, "I'll go in, I'll do it. I'll fly down and do it." And it wasn't until I got to, I think it was Luton Airport, but they sort of gave me a document with his face on it. Still didn't really think much of it then. I just thought it was Michael Jackson on the front cover.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And once I started reading, I was like, oh, it is actually Michael Jackson then.
That's a nice picture of Michael Jackson. Who am I looking after?
What's the relevance kind of thing?
Yeah.
And I, when he got off the plane, I looked at him, I just thought, oh, that's what Michael Jackson looks like. And I didn't really think nothing of it,
Well, again, this is interesting. I suppose you have to be like this as a bodyguard, because if you were like doing the fanboy thing, you can't look after him. There's absolutely no way someone who's mad for the celebrities, like, oh my God, it's Michael Jackson. You just couldn't do your job.
I never had any, when I was a kid, I never had heroes. I never had anyone to sort of, I listened to, obviously everyone knows Michael Jackson. I liked his music as well, but I didn't have all the albums. I didn't have the white socks and the white glove at school. Do you know what I mean? I never had anyone like that in my life growing up. What I looked at and thought, oh, I wish I was them. I used to see people I thought that I could be like.
Yes.
But I never wished to be someone else.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
Yeah.
It's almost like you just were, from such a young age, you just were very comfortable with being you. You weren't trying to escape and be anybody else.
Anything's possible.
Yeah.
Obviously, especially now in a lot of publications I've done with Vogue and GQ and Elle and Gracias, tons of them. I get put as Jason Statham a lot in those things.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
Would you like to be Jason Statham? And why would I? Hell, would I want? I'm quite happy being Simon Newton, thanks. You know what I mean,
I love that.
Do I want to be worth millions and being a movie star like Jason? Of course, but I want to do it as me. I don't want to be Jason Statham.
Yeah,
that's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, because and more people should think that way.
Yeah.
Like, be comfortable with the fact. Because I always say this. I say, look, if there was a diamond that was the rarest diamond in the world, the level of security around that diamond would be insane. No one's getting close to it because it's the most unique diamond in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's you.
Yeah, of course.
That's me. That's all of us. If we looked at ourselves in the same way that we looked at other people, we'd put a lot more time and energy and effort into our own experience. You were doing that early on. I mean, it's not, I don't know if I had mad heroes or anything that when I was growing up. And I would say in my field, I'm fairly successful at what I do. And I think it's because I've always been focused on, one, survival, because I came from a situation where I needed to. Two, curiosity. I'm always thinking, well, if they can do it, I can do it. But it's a similar mentality. Anything's possible. And that's why I loved what you said there.
Yeah. Choose someone that you they're doing something that you want to do, that's fine.
Study them.
Don't spend the rest of your life dreaming about being them. It's a waste of time.
Or dreaming about changing things that have happened before. Because either way, you're either stuck in the past or imagining something that's never going to happen. You can never be somebody else.
If they're doing something I like, first thing I think is, how can I do that?
Yeah.
I don't think I wish I was them.
No. And that's powerful. Because your self-esteem is good, your sense of self-worth is good, but you want more for yourself and you want to be the best version of self that you can be.
Yeah, and if I believe that it's possible, then I'll go and do it. There's nothing I haven't done that I thought I could, to today, I've done everything that I've wanted to do.
So let me ask you this question, because the Michael Jackson thing obviously wasn't like on your bucket list of things to do. It just sort of happened that this businessman turns out to be Michael Jackson. But if you put your mind to something, if you say, right, I want to be in a film doing this part or, having this experience, do you find that you kind of build that image in your head and you imagine what it will feel like and you kind of almost fantasize, not in a unrealistic way, but you create the visualization, you create the plan, you execute it? Is that how you get there? Yeah,
so it works for me, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think about how to go about doing that. And people say, how do you get, how do you get in this, how do you get in that? And when I look at my story of how I did it, I didn't really engineer it that much.
No.
Because you can't. There's no set way to do these things.
No.
You've got to see all these little opportunities on the way that lead to the next.
Yes.
That then take to the next thing. And if you're someone that doesn't see opportunity very well, you're going to struggle, unfortunately. Doesn't mean to say you can't, but, and things normally take me a bit longer than other people, but I always get what I want in the end. Always.
Patience is virtue.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to be patient and see it through.
But some people never get what they want and some people get what they want quite quick. I'm in the middle. Which I'm grateful because I still get what I want. It just takes me a bit longer. So it's still a nice place to be. But you have to, I think everybody has 3 or 4 life changing opportunities in their life, regardless of how much money they've got, regardless of whether they work in a factory, whether they're a soldier, whether they're whatever they might be. But you need to be able to identify those things and your life setup needs to allow you to be able to do those things. And quite often people don't even identify them. And if they do, they can't, maybe because they've got children and wife, husband, and they've got commitments.
No such word as can't, though.
No, they still can't, but they find it. It pushes them into a corner, especially if it's something that might be difficult to do in the first place. You've got that on top of your life,
But then you seek out ways to make it happen, I think, which is probably what you've always done. I think if I see an opportunity and I go, I can't do that because I've not got the money, or I can't do that because I've not got the time, it's like, well, who can I go to help me achieve that? Maybe you need to see a coach, maybe it's a friend that's done something before, maybe it's again observing and learning and doing courses, whatever it is, there's always a route. You may say, like, let's say you wanted to start a business, you may go, well, I've got no money to start a business, and I would say to that person, you do know the government gives out grants for new businesses, let's look at that together. Now you've got a little bit of a route into the finances. If you've got kids, okay, who's in your ecosystem that can help you to manage the time so that you can take 2 hours a week to focus on this project? So you have to break it down into bite-sized chunks.
It just takes longer, and that is
exactly it.
Going back to about doing what's easy. People want the easy route into these things.
And they see you and they go, well, you looked after Michael Jackson, it's easy for you.
That's what they think, yeah.
But they don't see the journey.
They think it's the same thing.
Yeah, of course. But it's not. I mean, what people don't see is the blood, sweat and tears, literally in your case.
Years of stuff I've done, especially with the filming, to getting films and that. I've done 4 or 5 years of getting out there and getting around people and castings and all sorts of bits and pieces before you kind of get picked up with a decent film.
Like a dog with a bone.
Yeah, well, because the day you give up, you've got nothing.
Yeah, that's so true.
It's over.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more.
That's 100% sure thing that it's over.
Yeah, like I couldn't agree more, and that's where you and I are very aligned. Not in many ways. I can't read a map, you can, but what we've both got is the dog with the bone mentality. I'm picking it up and I'm not dropping it until I've seen it through to the bitter end.
I have to do it,
Yeah, otherwise you can't rest, can you?
No. Even if I try a way, it doesn't work, and I just pull back, and I find another way.
Me too.
I pull back and I go again.
I love that about the human race, is that we are so adaptable, and if we let ourselves, we'll always find a way, but we don't tap into that innate humanness enough.
I don't find it difficult neither, but it is hard work.
It's such hard work.
It's hard work. For me, it's not difficult, but it is hard work,
Well, it's time, it's energy. You're often exhausted. You often don't sleep as well as other people if you are in the zone. But you have this experience with Michael Jackson. You're close up to the biggest superstar the world has ever seen, arguably. And then, obviously, you've got that as on your CV. But more and more of that type of work comes in, and you're around I guess you would call them celebrities, wouldn't you? Big name celebrities, royal family, you know, huge
I did a lot
people.
of I did everyone in terms of ultra high net worth families who weren't famous, just just had a lot of money, billions, a lot of them.
Yeah.
CEOs of banks, politicians. I've done everything, but in the end, I was very celebrity heavy.
Yeah. And that's because they'd hear about you, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's kind of a small circle, and you know, if people like you and you're a good one, kind of thing, they just keep you within, kind of thing. And that's how I ended up doing so many. I guess I didn't plan on ever looking just after celebrities or any of that.
Did you get quite? I mean, you said with Michael Jackson that was different because he had to have quite a big team. But for the others that you were around, were you able to build those relationships and have that?
A little bit, yeah. You know, you're with these people before they get up, and you go to bed after them.
Yeah.
So you spend a lot of time with them, and it's not just when they're working; it's on their days off as well. It's literally their whole time. So you get to experience their work with them, but then also maybe their family life, their friends and social life, because you're there all the time. So you do get to know these people relatively well. Some more than others. It just depends. But it's their life. It's not my life. I'm there to work and get paid and go home. That's what I was ever worried about, really.
And I suppose it's also, you can't really let go because it is a job. It's not like you can...
They're not your mate.
No, they're not your mate. And actually a lot of people wouldn't be able to separate that and compartmentalise that. But I think obviously your history in private work, you were just very much, again, hyper-focused.
I did celebrities towards the end of my career, if you like, the last 5 or 6 years. By that stage, I was a bodyguard who went to work, made money, went home.
Yeah.
I didn't have any... I'd done everything. That's why I left the industry in the end. I'd done everything I wanted to do. I didn't feel like I'd missed out on it. It was stuff I hadn't done, but I wasn't bothered about doing it. I ticked all the boxes for me.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's just a day's work. So I didn't get wowed over by much. I didn't care if I was getting on a private jet, if I was going to this country, that country. None of it mattered anymore. It's how much you're paying me for the day, how long's the job, and do I want to work for 3 months, 2 weeks, 1 month? You know, did it? And that's literally was a job. Just pay me. I did my job to my best of my ability. I wasn't interested in sort of trying to get in with being celebrities and all this nice stuff what can go with it. It made no difference to me at all. I was a bodyguard and you paid me to look after you.
Well, anyone that knows, if you meet people that are well-known, high profiles or whatever, within a very short period of time, they're just another human being.
They're all just people.
Yeah, they are all just people.
Everyone
Yeah,
uses a bathroom, everyone cries, laughs, sleeps, doesn't sleep. Everyone's got problems.
It's no different. It's just, I think a lot of, you said earlier about not having a hero and not idolising people. Well, if you idolise someone and they're your hero, you're going to lose your shit the minute they walk past you in the street. But when you realise, well, it doesn't... I always say never meet your hero anyway, because you're always going to be disappointed because they are just human. Yeah. So, you know, don't expect much from them. That's not fair. They are just somebody who happens to be well known. And obviously you've had that experience again and again and again, and it becomes boring. The dopamine levels are now not going to be as high when you're doing these jobs because you've done high-end security stuff for such a long time. Then you go into the acting because you've got a little taster there. Yeah. And so you come away from that work and you go into something completely different.
Yeah, it was. So once I've had enough of doing something, I'm off.
Yeah.
When it comes to work.
Yeah.
Because life's too short to be doing jobs you don't want to be doing.
True.
And obviously I've still got the security company, so it makes me money. I own a clothing brand, which is fairly new. I'll talk about it in a minute. And
just to know, for people that can see, you're wearing it today.
Yeah, Simon Newton London.
Nice.
SimonNewtonLondon.com, yeah. It's done really well, actually, but I'll touch on that in a bit. But I thought, what do I want to do now? Because at the time I was about 40, 41, and I thought, well, I'm not at retirement age. Financially, I'm comfortable, but I still don't envisage myself never doing anything again, kind of thing. So I thought, well, film work and the acting was something. In 2012, I doubled for Dave Bautista in the movie Final Score.
Nice.
And that kind of really made me want to be a sort of a proper actor, if you like. So I gave up literally that night. I gave up being a bodyguard, and anyone who called me, I said I wasn't available anymore. And I didn't just say I wasn't available now, so I don't do the job anymore, kind of thing. I had lots of people after me for quite a long time wanting to work and putting the money up and sort of almost begging, and I just said no, because once I'm done, I'm done. To me, it'd be going backwards if I went back to work.
I mean, that takes some balls to do that because you're turning down shitloads of money.
Yeah, it was
to
a lot of
focus on
money
your
and a lot
passion.
of work, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just thought it's going backwards. I want to be an actor now. I don't want to be a bodyguard. And although I'm doing this with you today, and I've done it with many others, talking about it, that was then, this is now, and people probably know me for being a bodyguard, particularly in the papers and stuff like that. But it's not what I'm doing now. Give it another 5 years. I'm hoping that we're only ever talking about films, really, because that's but yeah, I went to acting school. I got a diploma in screen acting. I've been to fight school on a number of occasions for screen fighting.
I mean, you don't do things cutting corners, do you? Do it properly.
If you want to be in decent films, you got to.
I'm fascinated by this, right? Because I can't think of anything worse. I mean, don't get me wrong. Back in the day, badly almost, but I did do a little bit of singing and the odd bit on stage. But I found it was a good way to earn money when I had nothing, and I was willing to give it a shot. But I'm nowhere near Mariah Carey, so now if you ask me to sing, you'd be quite disappointed.
You sing us out at the end if you want.
That is never going to happen. I want to keep some level of self-respect, but I can't think of anything worse than acting, because I would just feel so silly pretending to be someone else.
Yeah.
And yet I know some of the people that I've met that act, I'm just like, I just can't imagine you pretending to be someone else. I can imagine you doing a lot of action-packed fighting scenes, obviously, because of the way you look. But to actually see... And yet, obviously, I love watching films and I love going to the theatre and I love escaping reality. So I totally enjoy the forum. I just can't imagine doing it.
I like it. For me, it makes me uncomfortable.
Well, of course, yeah.
It
like
makes
the hard
you,
stuff.
at times, really uncomfortable. I'm working on a film at the moment, Rise of the Foot Soldier, Ibiza.
Oh, are you?
And we've got 1 week left. We did a month in Ibiza before Christmas, and we've done a few weeks here since, and we've got 1 week left in 2 weeks' time. And the film's sort of done. It comes out in November this year. I got quite a nice part in that, kind of pretty consistent. And there's parts in that, I like things that take me out of my comfort zone. There's not much that does that anymore for me.
Yeah.
But that does, when you've got two cameras stuffed in your face and everyone there, and I've got to do a Bosnian accent in this one, which doesn't make it even easier for me.
So you've had to study the accent
as
well.
So there's loads. I've had to put quite a bit into sort of doing this one. I've got another one in June. I've got 2 or 3 this year, and we've got Cannes Film Festival in May as well, which
brilliant
is quite a big thing for getting out there and getting filmed. But it takes me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I always do all right again, because I do better when I'm under pressure.
So do you find it almost, because you're going back to that element about I don't have heroes, I just want to be the best version of me, and I've always thought that you've always been that. You are Simon Newton, this is who I am, and I want to be the best version of who that is. But this is different because you're becoming someone completely different.
Yeah.
How easy has that been for you? I mean, the actual skill of it, I know there's a skill to it.
Yeah.
And there's loads of techniques and there's lots you have to learn.
Yeah.
We can't take that lightly. But do you quite enjoy becoming a different character?
Yeah. I just, because it's totally different to anything I've been doing. Like I said, it does make me feel uncomfortable at times, and I like that.
Yeah.
It's something, I like things I can build on.
Yeah.
Into sort of sky's the limit. And it is with that, because you can do hundreds of movies if you really want. You could go into directing, producing. There's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of hard work needed to get to move on with it.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to do neither. Like I always say, do what's hard. And there's so many actors out there who don't get any work at all, or bits and pieces, so it is hard to make it properly, if you like, in Hollywood movies. So it ticks all the boxes for me.
Yeah, it's just that
as hard as
constant
possible.
challenge.
Keep it difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't do the easy stuff. That's clear.
I don't enjoy it.
No, I can't imagine that you would survive very long if you had to do a mundane, repetitive...
I don't get any satisfaction of telling people about it neither.
No.
Because we can all pretend we were something. You can, especially with acting, you can wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to be an actor, and put on your Instagram, actor.
Yes, you're right.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm telling the world I'm an actor now, but for me personally, it does nothing for me at all. And that's what it's about. It's what it does for me, not what it does for everyone else.
Yes. What does it do for you? Apart from the fact that it's challenging, it's hard.
It excites me at times. It gives me a sense of achievement, which I don't get so much these days. And it does give me that, gives me that sense of reward.
And I suppose you have to really study not only your own character, but you have to get to know the other characters in the film or in the show.
Yeah, especially with when you're doing scripts and things, it can get. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to know with acting.
Yeah.
There's a ton of stuff to think about. You have to do 12 things at once quite often.
Which is exactly how your brain works.
Yeah. And often as well, I've been on set where everything's changed at the last minute.
Yes.
And I spent the last 2 months learning the dialogue and making sure I got it all tied down, and then they just changed it. So then you got to think on your feet. Again, everybody's there. You haven't got time to get it wrong. You can get things wrong once or twice, but by and large, time's money, which is more pressure, which is better for me. Give me more.
So actually, looking at it that way, it completely suits your personality.
Perfect for me, yeah.
And I suppose and again, if you think about it, as a security guard, you're not there as Simon, although it is you're there as a bodyguard for them. So when you're acting, you're not there as Simon, you're there as a character for them.
Yeah, and the other side of it as well, it's nice being an actor where quite often when I was a bodyguard, I'd go to these places where I'd have to look after, and I never looked after any actors actually, but they would have been people that had security and people you got looked after, and I get left alone. Now, when I go to Cannes, all the security there, I'm not one anymore. It's nice.
Yeah.
I do actually enjoy it. I'm away from it. Yeah. And that's the same on film sets when there's other security there, and it's nice now that I'm actually an actor. I'm not doing security anymore.
But do you think the security way of thinking ever leaves your brain?
Probably not on your day to day. Probably not. 17 years altogether is a long time.
Yeah.
But I only use it for my own security.
Yes.
Not for anybody. I don't look after anyone. Someone said to me the other day, "Would you come out of retirement to look after Tom Cruise?" But why do I want to look after Tom Cruise? I'll do a film with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
100%.
I know. It's like, I suppose they're still thinking in terms of they're bedazzled by the celebrity.
Yeah,
but you're like, I looked after Michael Jackson, mate. You don't get bigger than that.
No chance. I wouldn't look after. There's no one I'd look after again.
I mean, you literally have shut that door.
It's gone.
Locked it, thrown away the key.
And obviously money, you want to give me £3 million to look after someone for a day, I'm not stupid. Obviously I'll do it. But
I mean, yeah.
Realistically, no one's going to ever do it. So for me, it's over. It's done. But all these people I've still got an interest in, but for a different reason.
Yeah, because you want to be in that circle doing that job.
Yeah.
Not because you want to look after anyone anymore.
Yeah, going back to the Jason Statham thing, why... people say, "Oh, you look like Jason Statham." We'll try and make it that someone says to Jason Statham, "You look like Simon Newton." That's what you should be going for.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, aim to be the person that other people compare.
Start having him stopped in the street and your name being shouted at him.
If I ever see him, I'm going to go, "Excuse me, Jason, you look like Simon Newton."
But if you go, and that's setting the bar very high, I'm sure. But if that's where you set your bar, then there's a lot in between that. So you're definitely going to achieve something.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I love that mentality as well, because you're never going to stop with that mentality. There's no self-doubt. There's no messing around. It's just, I know what I want. I'm going to get there. And you will, because you've done everything
and I always
else.
do. When I look back at everything else, I always do. I don't know how I get there sometimes. I don't know how hard I've got to work to get there. But I just seem to find a way of sort of chipping away, and I just get there, and that's it.
What is your family? You said earlier that your family is still very sort of humble, grounded, that no one's really sort of stepped out the way you have, I suppose. What do they think of what you do? Because it is very different compared to what they do.
I think sometimes, more so now, they're not surprised. Maybe in the earlier days they were a little bit. But also, I don't think they fully understand everything I do, because I do so many different things. Even with the clothing brand, when I started that up, that was just with bomber jackets. When I used to look after Bella Hadid, I used to wear a bomber jacket for another company. And I got covered in Vogue quite a lot for wearing their stuff. And they started gifting me jackets. And I always said, one day I'm going to make my own bomber jacket. Why am I wearing someone else's? I didn't see the point. And I picked it up at the start of COVID hit, put it back down again, obviously. And then straight after COVID, we worked on it again. And now it's turned into a whole brand, like a fashion label.
Wow.
Yeah, we just recently launched tracksuits. T-shirts, bomber jacket. We've got a whole load of other stuff coming out.
Do all your security wear it?
Some do. No, not my company. No, I keep it very separate. But
do you? Because actually, you were getting papped wearing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so some of the lads I know who look after celebrities, who don't work for me. Some of them have got it.
Great.
And I've gifted a few people I've looked after over the years and bits and pieces. But I don't know. I'm not a fashion expert, but all of a sudden I've got a business brand, now that does clothing. Yeah.
I think the thing is that because you've got that experience, and I think that's key. You were papped. I guess that's what was happening. You were with these celebs, you were getting papped, and then you were getting featured in the articles. as a separate entity as well.
Yeah, it was in the end. Yeah.
So how did that come about?
I got branded as the real style star of London Fashion Week one year when I was with Bella, and it kind of come off. After that, everyone jumped on it, but no one knew my name back then. So I didn't. When I was a working bodyguard, I didn't do podcasts. I didn't do any articles, films, nothing. I didn't do anything like that. It wasn't until I left, which was one of the reasons why when I left, I left.
Yeah.
I didn't want to start coming talking about stuff, and even I don't talk about people.
No.
I'll tell you who I've looked after. That's not a secret.
Yeah.
But I won't tell you about them as individuals because it's just, I wouldn't do that with friends, family.
Well, it's not professional.
Well, anyway,
anyway.
yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
But you don't, what people do in the bathroom and how they go to sleep. It doesn't matter who it is. It's no one's business.
No,
really.
I agree.
Do you know what I mean? So I don't talk about that. But people say, oh, what were you talking about? You're allowed to talk. Well, yeah, because I'm saying I looked after Bella Hadid or I looked after Michael Jackson. It's no secret there.
No, you've been packed.
It's all over the yeah, and on top of that, it's just are they people that you're going to expect not to have security?
Yes.
If it's someone where you wasn't sure, and you think, oh, why does he need security? It's exposed something, but you wouldn't say. And there are people I've looked after I don't talk about.
Yeah.
But you don't know about them because I don't talk about them. So that's why I never get asked. Do you know what I mean? So
the ones you can say, you do.
Yeah. So certainly with celebrities, there's nothing wrong with it. Some people get a bit of a hang up about it, and especially people in the industry, you get, oh, I've looked after tons of celebrities, but I can't tell you who any of them are. And you just think,
sod off, you haven't.
Yeah.
And you get that in my bit as well. That there'll be a therapist that go, I look after really high end people. Well, if you did, you'd be able to say who they are.
Yeah, if you're not working anymore, there's no reason. Unless something particular has happened to them, but by and large, certainly with celebrities, out of all the people you look after, there's no reason why you can't say you looked after Beyonce or whoever else. It's no big thing. You don't have to drill into it.
No.
But there's no reason why you can't say that. So it's always alarm bells for me when people come out with nonsense like that.
I bet. Yeah. I mean, you just must laugh at that, though.
Do you know, it doesn't make a difference to me anymore. I'm so over it all now. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you've seriously moved on. You've got your fashion brand. You're acting. You're literally acting. You're not just saying you're acting. You're doing it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I know. I mean, people don't get that sometimes. I think, actually, he really is actually acting.
Yeah.
It's not like he's not having a go, or it's not a short film or an advert.
You're really doing it.
He's actually acting. Yeah. So I've been quite fortunate.
And that's why I said, like, your family must just look and go, where did he come from? Yeah. I mean, are you actually theirs? Have you done a DNA test?
I've thought that. Do I need to get some?
We need to get Jeremy Kyle in, do a DNA test.
I'd surprise myself sometimes, to be honest with you, a little bit with what I sort of managed to do. But if I'm doing something, I'm doing it. That's the point.
Yeah.
I'm not half in, half out. If I'm half in and half out, I tell you I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I don't even say I might be. I'm just not doing it. If I'm 100% in, it'll get done at some stage or another. It'll get done, and that's it.
When you were in the garden, 7, 8 years old, playing with your little plastic soldiers and, climbing trees and out on your bike, did you ever foresee the life that you had? Did you have flashes of it? I
foresee the military, obviously, because that's all I ever wanted to do. Yeah. Everything else, being a bodyguard, full stop, let alone for the people that I've looked after. Yeah. Never even crossed my mind. Being an actor in movies, never even crossed my mind. Clothing brand wouldn't have been something I would have thought. If you to pick a business, I don't know what I would have chosen as a child to do as a business, but I don't think I would have chosen a clothing brand. Being a fact, it's Simon Newton London. It's even my name, so it's not even. I never would have thought of that.
So it's literally you've pretty much designed your life in the present. It's been, I'm here now. What's next? It's not like I've got this 5-year plan. I mean, with the acting, I know you've had to go to acting school, but generally it's not been, I've got a 5-year plan. These are the steps I've got to take to get there. It's kind of been, this is what's happened. This is where I'm at.
This is what we're going to do. Yeah. It's seizing opportunities again.
Yes.
Doing things off the back of other things that have happened, but you don't know are going to happen as well.
Because you're very much, I think, and the reason I keep saying this is because so many people live, as we said before, in the past or in the future. They're not actually paying attention to what's in front of them now. They're not seeing that door of opportunity. They're not trying to look for the key to unlock it. They're thinking, oh, if only I hadn't have done that. If only I could be like them. And you're very much, I think, just focused on what's in front of me now. How do I get there? What do I do? There's the key. Open the door. Here I am.
And quite often I take an opportunity because I know it'll lead to that opportunity, which will lead to that opportunity, what will actually get me to the opportunity that I'm really after.
Yeah.
But I've already taken 3 opportunities before. I've identified my end game, and I've taken it early because I think, well, I know I can manoeuvre to it. Whereas people will take an opportunity to go straight to the end one.
Yes.
And you won't get that.
That's true.
And they go, well, I can't get there with that, so I won't take it. It's pointless. No, it isn't, because you've got 3 more opportunities in between that you need to get done before you get to it.
And that's where I say you're quite primitive. I said this early on, because I don't think the driver for you is anything other than having the experience. So yes, obviously money is a big part. You've mentioned that a few times, but I think actually for you, it seems like you're driven by the experience, the adrenaline, the dopamine, the learning, the curiosity, the ability to show yourself that you can do it. And I think that being very grounded in those experiences and that desire to push through and have that human experience is quite hunter. You know, I've got to catch this food. There's 3 different ways I could do it. What's the best opportunity? You know, it goes back to that almost, I keep saying almost animal-like quality that you have to just be in the moment now, focused on the opportunity.
The plus side for me with all this is I've never felt like I've done a day's work.
Which is, I mean, considering some of the work you've done.
I know, because I only do what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
I've never felt like I've done a day's work, and that is something to be said for that. I never thought about that at the time because I was just doing what I enjoyed doing. But when I look back now, you know, I love the fashion brand. I love the clothes. I've always liked clothes myself anyway from a young adult. Acting, you know, I just enjoy doing that. The security companies, I don't necessarily enjoy the security side so much anymore, but I do enjoy business.
Yes.
And that's my input in the security company now is business.
Yeah.
And I still very much get to do that with new contracts and everything else. So I enjoy everything I do. And people say to me, you work all the time. It's not work though. You're only working if it's a Sunday, I'm here doing this with you, which is fine. Well, this isn't, you know.
Do you know how much I love that you said that? I remember, do you know Gary, I can never say his surname, I'll call him Gary V. Everyone will know who I mean. I think it's Vaynerchuk. Anyway, I won't try and do that because I'm making an absolute tit of myself. He said once, and I saw it and it really resonated, because people always say to me, you work too much, similar sort of thing, you're always working, you do. And I'm like, yeah, but and he said this, someone else's idea of happiness and joy and enjoyability is going to the football or going to watch a show. I like those things too, but I like what we're doing now just as much. So if this is my idea of fun, it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, right.
There might be bits around it, you know, like logistics and fitting things in. Those things are always a bit stressful. But ultimately, that would be the same if I was going to watch a show. You'd still have to do the logistics. You'd still have to plan things out. I literally love my job. And that's what you're saying about yours. And again, I own the clinic. I've got my patients. I do the podcast. I've got the social media side of things. I've got my fingers in a lot of pies.
Yeah.
You know, as I said to you earlier.
Enjoy it all.
Yeah, I think if you're not doing something you enjoy, it's because you don't believe you're allowed to. I think what I'm getting from you is that you had that certain amount of freedom at a time when kids were able to play outside more. And certainly, you know, it sounds like your life was safe enough for you to be able to have those experiences. But it feels like you were able to follow your own path. There wasn't too much pressure from other people telling you who should be, what you should do. I think when parents are involved saying, you've got to be a lawyer, you've got to be a doctor, that pressure to be something you don't want to be and not being able to find your own path.
I never had from my parents, they never had any expectations for me when I was an adult, if you like.
Yeah.
What happened.
Yeah.
Growing up, I had my parents, as many are, product of society.
Yeah.
Which done me a favour, actually, because I learned as an adult to be the opposite.
Yeah.
And if they did anything good for me, that was the biggest thing they did, without even realising, because they just did what they thought was right and they were bringing me up. But actually, it taught me how not to be.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question as like a closing thought, really, because I talk a bit about epigenetics, which is how the genetic expression changes through the generations of a family. So often we have characteristics of our grandparents and the traumas that they went through, or the good things that they went through. It doesn't always have to be trauma-based. Their gene expression altered slightly, and we take on the expression of that gene. So, for example, they did experiments on Holocaust survivors. I've said this loads of times, so it's probably boring for everybody else, but where they looked at the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, and they looked at the fact that they had higher incidence of things like anxiety, stress, depression. And that makes sense because of what their grandparents went through. What do you know about your grandparents?
I don't know a great deal. I mean, they're both in World War II.
Yeah.
My mum's dad was in the army. He got blown up somewhere in Europe. Still stayed alive, but quite bad injuries. My dad's dad was in the Navy somewhere again, out in just wherever he went, I don't know, but he's part of World War II. And I think both my grandmas were something in, back at home, but they were working towards a war effort in some description.
Were you hearing those stories a lot when you were growing up?
My granddad who was in the army, got blown up, so I used to spend quite a lot of time with him, and he'd show me all the old pictures, and I used to enjoy that as a kid.
Yeah.
And he'd tell me all the stories, and with the pictures to go along with it and everything else. So a lot of that, I had a lot of that when I was a child. That appealed to me a little bit.
Yeah.
I think what appealed to me with that, which is quite interesting, is it wasn't the shooting people. As a child, I never thought about killing anybody, but I did wonder. I always wondered what it was like to be shot at.
Really?
Or when I was playing in the garden, I always used to wonder, what would it be like if I was actually doing this to not be hit, kind of thing. I used to wonder that quite a lot.
So it's almost like even as a little boy, you were trying to work out how you would dodge that.
How this would be like if I was doing it for real, and that's what I had to do it for real.
Yeah.
At some stage, I had to join the army and be able to do it for real.
But doesn't it show you then? And that's why that's quite interesting, as you say, because listening to your granddad and sort of seeing how injured he was, and then becoming the person that goes into the army that does high-end security that didn't get injured, the fact that you thought about it so much, your brain was gearing itself, because during those formative years when we're younger, you're literally, neuroplasticity, we're moulding our brain. So we're conditioning ourselves through the experiences that we've had and the stories that we hear and the people that we're around, which is why it's so important childhood in terms of developing temperament and personality. But it also shows, because you were thinking and you were curious, your brain was literally wiring around this life. It was almost, some would say, predetermined that you were going to do it.
Yeah, obviously you don't know at the time, do you? But when you look back at sort of the way you went.
Yeah.
And again, with the army cadets and all my friends
of course.
And all my friends joined the army around the same time.
Yeah. So it was cultural,
sort of
really.
Big influence on it, yeah.
And personality-wise, would you say you were like any of your grandparents?
I don't know, because I don't remember my granddad, who I spent quite a bit of time with. I don't. So when I got old enough to really remember much about being around him, he was really old then.
Yeah.
He had a head injury during the war, and he was given to the age of 35 or something to live, but he died when he was like 85, 86.
Oh wow!
But he had a lot of severe headaches, and he was quite often he'd sit in silence because he was in pain and didn't say anything. Aww. So he probably wasn't the man that maybe he might have been if he didn't have that. But he had a good sense of humour.
Did he?
Yeah, he had a great sense of humour, yeah.
Even though he was in all that pain?
Yeah, on and off, because obviously the pain, but by and large, yeah. And actually, I'm quite like him in that respect.
Yeah. Well, and obviously your dad was a firefighter, so there's this thing to serve and protect in your blood by the sounds of it.
Yeah, you'd seem, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful, really. It just shows that our genetics and our family lineage have got so much to answer for, good and bad, actually. And we are, and I always say this to people, when we look and we compare and despair, I always say it's not just the person now, it's often to do with their family history, and it's to do with how they're brought up, and it's to do with their genetics, and it's to do with, the people that they're around growing up. There's so many different factors in who we become. And I think that's where we have to start showing gratitude, because I always say, even if you've had loads of horrible things happen, if you're doing well now, be grateful for the experiences, good and bad.
Yeah.
It's what we were saying earlier about failure. Everything's a chance to learn and to grow and to develop. So when we hold gratitude for the whole story, then I think that's where you release yourself from.
Everyone has a rough time as a child. Everyone has a rough time as an adult. Obviously, some more than others, and some really go through the mill.
Yeah.
And some not so much. There's all different levels of that. But it's the same as running a business. Your life is the same as running a business.
It is, yeah. I say that.
You can't give up on it. You just got to keep going, and you don't always get dealt the cards you want, and it's tough shit.
Yeah.
Really, it is.
Yeah.
Especially when you're an adult, you shouldn't really be. It's all right to cry, have a hug and have a chat and cry on someone's shoulder, but at times you've got to have a word with yourself as well.
You've got to be accountable.
Yeah, you've got to.
And if you're not going to do that, then you're going to lose.
You just end up being weak again, unfortunately.
Yeah, you do.
And being weak's not great. It's not great for any male or female. It's not a great thing.
And I suppose in my job, I see that a lot. And my job is to help people understand why they're stuck in that space and to rebuild their brain body systems, because their nervous systems are often shot to pieces and they've just gone into that playing dead and they never come out of it. What's interesting about you, and I said this earlier, is that you can go into that desensitization, you can go into that sense of numbness, but I said, didn't I, that you're almost able to be in different compartments, different parts. You don't get overwhelmed by just one element of your life. You keep moving, and that's why staying in the present is so good. Because here, right now, no matter what happens in 10 minutes, no matter what happened 10 minutes ago, this moment right now is fine.
Yeah.
And if you can stay there, I think anything's possible, as you've said before. So
works well for me.
It works well for you, very well for you. I mean, your life has been extreme, but extravagant and, exciting and all those things.
Yeah, I mean, always, working away and seeing a lot of things that you don't really want to be subject to. I've also had a ton of good things that I've been subject to and still are today. So, and
that internal power system that you have to keep pushing through is extraordinary.
It never seems to go away for me. I'm lucky in that respect because I talk about it like it's easy because it's easy for me.
Yeah.
And if you're someone that's got half of what I've got or none at all, then you're going to find it harder.
True.
Doesn't mean to say it's impossible.
No.
But you're going to find it harder. And there's people out there who've got more than me who find it easier for me as well.
Yeah. And we're all, I think the thing is that we can all go, well, it's what I said earlier. You've got more money. You've got more this. You've got... Yes, but you've got to work with what you got.
There's always someone who's got more than you.
Yeah. I always say this about beauty as well. You can be the most beautiful girl in the room for 10 minutes until the next beautiful girl walks in.
Comes in.
You can't measure yourself against that.
You have to be happy with what you've got.
Yeah.
That's where I sit with mine. I like nice things, but I don't have to have them.
Yeah.
Houses, cars, watches, all the immaterial stuff. I like all that. But I don't have to have it. If I haven't got it, it doesn't depress me.
Yeah.
And if I've had it and I haven't got it now, I'll get it back again at some stage. And it's not, I don't care what other people think about that, what they think I've got and I haven't got. And I'm very happy with everything I've achieved and what I've got in life, including, my relationship and everything. I'm just happy with everything.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter to me. If it gets better, great, because everyone wants to get better.
Yeah.
If it takes a bit of a dip, that's fine. I'm still happy with what I've got and what I'm doing.
Well, it goes back to what I just said. Gratitude goes a long way. If you can stay grateful, and I love that you've just said that about the stuff, the material stuff, because you're right. If your life is dependent on, well, that's quite narcissistic, isn't it? I'm happy because I've got the house, the car, the watch. But like you say, anything can happen. So if it all goes, would you still be happy?
Yeah, it makes no difference to me, I've got to be honest.
And that's how you know.
I always like to say I like having it because I think there's a lot of people that have this stuff, especially in today's world. It's not as accepted anymore to say you've got a Ferrari and a watch.
Yeah.
It can be snubbed slightly. And I see why when the country's going down the pan slightly financially, but also you shouldn't get penalised for doing well.
No, you shouldn't. And I also think that...
Which we do a lot in this country.
We do that a hell of a lot in this country. And I think, well, I've just listened to a very interesting... I mean, I'm not a massive fan of Stephen Bartlett's podcast. I've said this before. Anyway, my point being is he did one recently with two guys that are... they were talking about wealth. I don't know if you saw it, like the debate. And there was one that's UK based and the other guy I think is Australian or from New Zealand. And they were having this bit of an argument because the one that was UK based saying, no, we should penalise the very, very wealthy. And the other guy was saying, actually, I don't think you're seeing the point, because if we penalise the people at the top, what happens is they leave the country. And so they end up paying taxes elsewhere, or if you go to Dubai, you don't pay taxes at all, but they end up not putting the money back into this country, which means the people that are lower down in terms of finances pay more.
That's exactly what's just happened here now.
Yeah, exactly that.
We've lost billions of pounds in tax through penalising the higher net worth. And not when I say penalising, not getting them to pay their share. They were quite happy to pay their share over getting them to pay. And actually what they've done is they've lost more money than they've gained by doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a massive failure for
that
this
was
country.
The whole debate on the Stephen Bartlett podcast. And although I'm not a massive fan of his, I would urge anyone who doesn't understand that to go and watch that particular episode with these two guys, the debate, because it's so true.
It's the smaller people that lose out from that mentality.
It's so true. It's so true.
It gets drilled into society that the rich should pay more, but actually it's detrimental, unfortunately.
I agree. And I think that it's a shame, really, because it stops people wanting to be entrepreneurs in this country. Yeah. And actually, that would...
Where else do you get punished for doing well?
I know. It's mental.
What Olympic Games have you been punished for coming first?
Yeah, I know. It is absolutely mental. And look, we've spoken about you quite honestly and said, I came from a very humble background. We didn't have much, but you've worked and worked and worked and put yourself in life or death situations to make your money. Why should you be penalised for that?
Yeah.
It makes no sense whatsoever. And ultimately, we should all be able to look at the American dream. I know that things are a bit different now, but that's how they built their country, living off the dream. What happens here is you live off the dream and then you're penalised for making it.
Yeah.
It's ludicrous.
It's not a good place to be now.
No, it's not.
Certainly for the middle and higher earners, which is a sad place again, because if in 10, 20 years all the middle and higher earners leave this country, which is what they are slowly doing,
it's
who's
a
going
point
to
of
suffer?
no return.
It's going to be the low earners again. So they don't realise what they're doing.
No, they don't. Well, this is where this alternative media space is quite useful, because if you're not hearing this in the mainstream media and you tune into this podcast, you get to the end and go, oh, I've not thought of that before.
Yeah.
You know, and those little snippets make people just go, that's interesting.
Yeah, I see it from both sides because I'm come from no money.
Yeah, exactly.
So I totally get both sides.
Yeah.
But it's also not quite as clear cut as what people realise with, you know, people earning hundreds of millions should be paying hundreds of millions in tax. It doesn't really.
You will be punished one way or another when you have that.
It's the smaller people get punished for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the lower earners will actually end up picking up the bill.
Yeah. I hear that. I see that. I know that. And that's something that we've all got to become a bit more aware for. And, you know, encourage our young people to be entrepreneurial, encourage them to want to make lots of money, because that's what this country really needs. Like you said, I think we were talking about the safety actually in terms of military and the country being safe. It's the same for finances. If we were encouraging our young people to be entrepreneurial, within a generation or two, we might, I mean, whether we would see that, I don't think we would, but this country might be able to...
Slowly, 2 or 3 generations would slowly spin this country back into being Great Britain again, and not just Britain. But the problem with it is you know, even in schools, right back from when we was at school to what I do today, no one ever showed me how to do a set of accounts.
I know, I say this all the time.
How to open a bank account, you know, how money works in terms of expenditure, what you should be saving, and all. You don't get anything like that. No. It's almost like you're suppressed slightly. They don't want people...
Almost.
They don't want people being able to...
It's clear.
Yeah, having that ability.
Yeah. I mean, I think on every episode I've mentioned the education system. It is a joke. The amount of kids... Well, I mean, the poor people that listen to this are going to hear me say this again, but the amount of kids that have been put into isolation because they don't fit into the classroom environment. So they're shoved into a room with 2 or 3 others that don't fit into the environment. What are you doing? What are you saying to a kid of 14 years old? Right, go and sit on your own because you won't do what we're telling you to do. Either they're going to go and sit in there, twiddle their thumbs and have really low self-esteem, or they're going to be a Simon Newton and go, right, I'm going to go and do what I want to do and I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to show you all. But some kids are not built the same way as you.
And the sad thing is... I'm not the majority when it comes to
No, you're not.
That. You know, I don't know if I'm as little as minority, but I'm not far from it.
No, I agree.
You know, unfortunately, a lot of kids come out of school and go the opposite way to what I did.
Crime and addiction.
Yeah.
And we can't blame them because their formative years have led them there.
Yeah.
But then what do we do as a society to fix that?
That does go down to doing the easiest thing again.
It does. And if their parents are doing the easiest thing,
if
again,
you come
it's
from that background already.
And the system doesn't support kids that are going down that road. There's no community centres, there's no youth clubs, there's very little community at all. There's not much for them to do. So it's not safe for them to play outside, or if it is safe for them to play outside, their parents don't think it's safe for them to play outside. They're on their computers, they're sitting on their phones. It's a scary, scary time. And I hope that it doesn't keep going down because, I mean, I know they say you've got to hit rock bottom before things change, but what is rock bottom now? Who knows?
Well, we'd be a third world country in the end if we're not careful.
Yeah, and I think that is a lot of people's fear.
Yeah.
And you've been there, seen that, got that T-shirt, designed the T-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, you know, I mean, I don't plan to stay here forever, I've got to be honest.
No. How many people are saying that now?
Not at all, you know.
Yeah.
And there was a time when I used to fly back from working in the Middle East and landing at Gatwick or whatever, and I'd be like, "It's just home. I can't ever see me totally leaving here." But now I don't have a plan to spend
the rest of your
life
that
much longer. If I'm honest,
no, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. I'm
not to mention that, and this is no one's fault, but not to mention the Great British weather.
Oh my God!
Forget about taxes and schooling.
I know.
You know, so. To go not that far away from here on a plane, where taxes are slightly better, you know, schooling is probably better. It's sunny for 8 months in the year instead. It's a no-brainer for me.
Of course it is, yeah. And now that you're an actor, You can pretty much do that, can't you?
Yes, the same as a clothing brand. Those two things, the security company, I'm still slightly locked into London, but I don't envisage keeping that forever. Once that goes and I'm only doing 2 other things, I can do that from anywhere in the world, to be honest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is the actual dream, isn't it? Freedom.
Yeah, I don't want to be old in this country.
No, I agree. Yeah. I think if we can create a life that gives us that freedom to choose.
It's a shame because as little as 15, 20 years ago, I thought very differently.
So did I. Do you know what? I'd never have had this conversation with anyone. I'd have been like, no, I'm staying in the UK. This is where I belong. This is my home. From,
and this is it. Yeah. Even though it's a small country, small island, but I still very much was committed to being here now, you know, because I've got a lot going on and it's fine at the moment, but by and large, I won't be staying here forever.
No. And do you know what? It's funny you said that because I was exactly the same. I would never have thought, especially having a daughter, I'd be like, oh, I can't move away. But the chances are she's going to be like, yeah, let's go.
She'll be telling you she wants to move away before you say it.
Yeah. Well, because I've been telling her to travel anyway. You know, once she finishes college, perhaps go and get a job on the airlines, have a little bit of travel. Just get paid while you're doing it. You've got your roots with me wherever you are. Yeah. And then so the chances are she's going to do that anyway. And if you're only a couple of hours away, we know how easy it is to jump on a plane to, you know, Spain or Portugal or Italy. It's not that much of a big deal these days.
At all. If I drive from when I first started the clothing brand, some of it was done in Manchester. It'd take me about 6 hours from London to get there. Sometimes in traffic, I can be to say somewhere like Marbella or Alicante in about an hour and a half.
I know. And okay, you've got the airport bit, but if you pack light,
door to door, 3.5 hours. 4 hours, man.
I know. I mean, the world is a smaller place now.
Yeah.
Simon, we've talked about everything.
It's been all over the place.
I think by the end of this, people have just been like, wow, they went everywhere. We did. We've done politics, we've done finances, we've done moving countries, we've done things blowing up, people dying, clothing. I mean, we've done it all.
It's a nice mixture.
It is a nice mixture. It says a lot about you, though. It shows how multifaceted you are. You've got stories upon stories upon stories. And I know you've done tons of podcasts. And I know that we said before we started to record, it does get boring telling the same story. So I hope it's not been boring for you.
No, it's been a nice, few different bits and pieces.
Yeah,
it's been
good.
Quite fun,
It's been fun for me as well. Nice way to spend a Sunday.
Yeah, great.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks very much for having me.